It started on a Tuesday night, the kind where quiet power plays out behind menus of overpriced seafood and fine wine. At a rooftop restaurant in downtown Seattle, the kind where every table had a panoramic view and every dish had a name too long to pronounce, a woman named Veronica Steele was commanding more attention than the skyline. At 44, Veronica had built Steel Tech from the ground up, carving her name into the boys' club of Silicon Valley with nothing but relentless ambition and a jawline that could cut glass. But tonight she wasn't closing another deal in a boardroom. She was reviewing a $210 million 0-cents merger contract over dinner, alone, until a server interrupted her solitude. "Excuse me," the waiter said softly, clearing a plate. "I think there's a phrasing issue in this clause here. It might be open to dual interpretation." Veronica looked up, slow and sharp. Across the linen tablecloth stood a young black man with calm eyes and a patient voice. His name tag read, Darius W. His apron was spotless, his hands were steady, but to Veronica, he was out of line. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice slicing the air like a blade. The dining room fell quiet. "Are you correcting me?" The contract, nearly 2 inches thick and bound in crisp white, was snatched from the table and waved like a warning. "Do you even have a law degree, or are you just a fan of courtroom dramas?" Darius didn't flinch. "Actually, I studied contract law," he said simply, "and the ambiguity in paragraph 3 could invalidate the agreement under litigation." Veronica laughed, but her eyes didn't. She was used to bulldozing billion-dollar deals not being contradicted by someone pouring her water. "Fine," she snapped, fire in her voice. "If you're so smart, translate the whole thing into plain English, now, in front of everyone." He looked at her for a long moment, then gently took the document she thrust toward him. Around them, conversation stopped, forks hovered midair. Cell phones were quietly tilted for a better angle. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Because once I begin, I won't stop, and you might not like what I find." She leaned back in her chair, arms folded. "I'm counting on it." Darius opened to the first page. His voice was clear, steady. Clause 1. Transfer of assets totaling $210 million, 0 cents pending regulatory clearance. He paused. Translation? You're buying another company for $210 million, 0 cents, but only if the government says yes. A few people chuckled quietly. Veronica's expression didn't change, but her posture stiffened. Clause 2. 90-day audit window with full access to all financial records and patents. He glanced at her again. "That means you got 3 months to uncover anything shady, but you might not like what you find." He flipped another page. Now the problematic part. Termination clause, material adverse changes. The language says the deal can be canceled if anything significantly affects the market, but it doesn't define what significantly means. That vagueness is dangerous. Veronica paled. She had paid elite attorneys, plural, to vet this contract. None had caught that. And here's the kicker, he continued, his voice low but clear. Even if they cancel, they keep the $22 million 0 cents deposit. She slammed her hand down on the table. "You've made your point." "No, I haven't," Darius said calmly. "Because Clause 5? They retain rights to any technology developed jointly, even after the merger falls apart." Someone in the room gasped. Veronica snatched the contract back, eyes darting over the page. The crowd wasn't watching a waiter anymore. They were watching a man dismantle a corporate empire with his words. James, the restaurant manager, rushed forward. "Sir, perhaps you should—" "No," Veronica cut him off. "Let him finish." Darius looked up. Clause 17 gives them the ability to override strategic decisions. If there's a post-merger dispute. The contract trembled in her hands. "You're making this up," she whispered. "I'm not," he said. Page 47, the clause allows indefinite access to your customer data even if the deal falls apart. Veronica froze. That clause had been added in the last revision. She hadn't read it. She trusted her legal team. And that's when another voice cut through the air. He's absolutely correct. Every head turned. An older man in a tailored charcoal suit rose from the corner booth, walking toward the scene with calm authority. His face was familiar to anyone in corporate America. Ronald Haynes, the legendary fixer and partner at Haynes & White, known for rescuing companies from their own bad decisions. "I was trying to enjoy my linguine in peace," he said dryly, "until I heard this very articulate young man save your company from annihilation." Veronica blinked. "You know him?" "Darius Whitman, Harvard Law, interned at my firm twice. He's the one who caught the poison pill clause in the Technova merger. Saved us $88 million? 0 cents. Now, it was Veronica's jaw that dropped. Tingled his hair cutter. "He's not a waiter?" And "Oh, he is. Temporarily. Helping his fiancée's family, but let's not get distracted by appearances." Darius gave a faint smile. "Not everyone who serves your meal is beneath you." Veronica felt the full weight of the room shift. Veronica tried to gather herself, but the momentum had already left her. What had started as a casual dinner with a $210 million 0 cents contract on the table had spiraled into a public masterclass in legal deconstruction, led not by her high-powered legal team, but by a man she'd mistaken for background help. Her voice, once razor-sharp and in total control, now barely registered above a whisper. "You never answered me," she said, clinging to some scrap of composure. "Why are you working here?" Darius tilted his head slightly, as if the question itself was evidence of the deeper problem. "Because family comes first," he replied. "My fiancé's father had surgery 3 weeks ago. The restaurant needed help. I could have kept applying to firms or prepping for the bar exam again, but sometimes helping someone through a hard season is more important than chasing prestige." The room was silent. Not because they didn't know what to say, but because they understood. Veronica, for the first time that night, had no comeback. Even Ronald Haynes seemed moved. "We could use more people like you in law," he murmured. Darius looked him in the eye. "That's the plan." But it wasn't over yet. Darius pulled out his phone, calmly unlocking it and scrolling for a moment before turning the screen toward Veronica. "There's one more thing you should know," he said. His voice no longer just measured. It was deliberate, surgical. "I've been documenting this entire interaction, from the moment you dismissed me for being a mere waiter to every clause we've discussed. And I've also recorded the discriminatory language you used. Your assumptions, your tone, all of it." Veronica's face drained of color. "You can't do that," she hissed, glancing around as other diners now openly held up their phones, capturing everything. "Yes, I can," he answered. "Washington State is a one-party consent state, and this is a public venue. But even more than that, what you've demonstrated tonight isn't just arrogance, it's institutionalized bias. I intend to make sure that it gets addressed." Ronald nodded slowly, clearly having known what was coming. "You're not just doing this for yourself, are you?" "No," Darius replied, sliding his phone back into his pocket. "I'm doing it for every qualified person who's been overlooked, dismissed, or demeaned because they didn't look the part." The restaurant manager stood nervously at the edge of the scene. "Should I?" "No," Ronald interrupted firmly. "Nobody is going anywhere. Miss Steele, I suggest you sit and listen. You might learn more in the next few minutes than in your entire career." Veronica stared at Darius like she was seeing him for the first time. "You've planned all of this," she said, not with anger now, but with dawning realization. "I did my homework," he answered, "because I knew that tonight, of all nights, you'd be reviewing this contract in public. That wasn't hard to figure out. You come here every Tuesday at 8 p.m. It's been in your calendar for months, publicly available thanks to that puff piece Forbes did on your daily routines. I didn't just wait for this moment. I created it." "But why?" she asked again, this time genuinely shaken. "Why go through all this trouble?" Darius leaned forward slightly. "Because when I was 16, my mother was evicted after signing a rental agreement she didn't fully understand. No one explained the fine print. No one offered help. She trusted someone who took advantage of her, and we lost everything. Since then, I've made it my mission to ensure no one else walks blindly into legally rigged traps. whether they're tenants, employees, or CEOs. That landed hard. Even Veronica had to acknowledge it. She leaned back in her chair, suddenly feeling the weight of not just the contract, but of every decision she'd made leading up to that moment. "So what now?" she asked, voice barely audible. "Now?" Darius echoed. "Now I send a complete analysis of this contract. Every flawed clause, every risk, every potential liability to your board of directors. I already have the emails drafted. One click." Veronica stood abruptly. "You don't understand. If this merger falls apart, SteelTech might collapse. The investors will pull out." "Better to collapse now and rebuild," Darius replied coolly, "than to sign away the future under false pretenses and lose everything later." Ronald Haynes stepped in, his voice the measured tone of decades of experience. "Miss Steele, this young man just saved your company from a catastrophic deal. You should be thanking him, not threatening him." But Darius wasn't finished. "You might also want to check with your former junior associate, Kevin Langston. Fired 3 months ago, you told HR he was not culturally aligned and lacked professional polish. Those terms, they're coded, and I know because he's my cousin. He showed me the emails." Veronica's face fell. "This is blackmail." "This is truth," Darius corrected, "and you'll find it hits harder than any headline." "Are you going public with this?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "That depends," he said. "Not on me, on you. Own the mistake. Apologize. Address the structural biases in your hiring and leadership. Make things right. You still have that power. But if you double down and try to silence me, well then, yes, I go public, and you'll be the face of a lesson corporate America will never forget." Veronica looked around at the restaurant, at the cameras still filming, at the diners whispering, at Ronald Haynes watching her like a disappointed mentor. She realized there was no path back to the comfortable illusion of control, only forward, through humility. 3 weeks later, Veronica Steele sat alone in her sleek, glass-walled corner office, staring out over the foggy Seattle skyline. The room, once buzzing with assistants, analysts, and a sense of invincibility, was now eerily quiet. In the lobby downstairs, security guards were carefully placing her personal items into 2 unmarked cardboard boxes. The board had voted unanimously to remove her as CEO of SteelTech. It wasn't just about the contract. It was about the story that had exploded across the internet like a corporate bombshell. The video of the restaurant confrontation had gone viral in under 12 hours. Headlines screamed with poetic irony. Harvard-educated waiter destroys $200 0 cents. Merger, how prejudice cost a CEO her career. And the night corporate arrogance was served cold. Social media dissected every second of the clip. Lawyers, entrepreneurs, and everyday people weighed in. But the public didn't just watch. They took sides, and most of them weren't on Veronica's. Investors quickly distanced themselves. Within 5 days, 2 major contracts were canceled. A major cybersecurity partner terminated their agreement citing ethical misalignment. Internal emails leaked, former employees came forward. Some described the culture at SteelTech as toxic, exclusive, and dismissive of any voice that didn't mirror Veronica's own. The legal team responsible for the flawed merger contract was quietly let go, and the merger itself? Hartwell Enterprises withdrew their offer entirely once independent auditors confirmed the legal red flags Darius had identified were not just real, they were worse than initially reported. Meanwhile, Darius Whitman's life transformed at a speed even he couldn't have predicted. Within 2 weeks of the viral video, he received over 50 offers, everything from senior legal counsel positions to law firm partnerships, and even a Netflix documentary proposal. But what caught his attention most was an offer from a small group of minority-owned venture capitalists. They wanted to fund his own firm, full backing, no strings. And so the Whitman Law Collective was born, dedicated to defending small business owners, tenants, and underrepresented entrepreneurs from exploitative contracts and legal manipulation. Their tagline, "Power through understanding." Kevin Langston, the cousin who'd once been fired for not fitting the culture, became the firm's first employee. He used part of his $850,000 zero-cents out-of-court settlement, one after the discriminatory internal emails, to finish law school. Together, they began reviewing contracts for mom-and-pop shops, immigrant-owned startups, and nonprofit organizations that had never had access to quality legal defense. The firm had a waiting list of over 300 clients by month's end. And what about Ronald Haynes? He did more than mentor Darius, he became his biggest champion. At legal conferences across the country, Ronald told the story of the Tuesday night at Indigo Lounge. He didn't name names, but every lawyer in the room already knew. He used it as a case study in how brilliance, when paired with humility and principle, can dismantle institutional arrogance faster than any lawsuit. Back at SteelTech, things were unraveling quickly. Veronica's severance package was frozen pending shareholder lawsuits. One class action suit claimed breach of fiduciary duty. Another argued discriminatory hiring practices based on the now public internal HR correspondence. Suddenly, the once untouchable CEO found herself unemployable. Headhunters stopped returning calls. Diversity consultants were now a condition of every interview. She had lost not just her company, but her credibility. 6 months after the confrontation, Darius returned to the restaurant. Not in an apron, but in a tailored navy suit. He brought 5 new clients with him, each of them small business owners. He'd helped renegotiate predatory leases or lopsided supply agreements. James, the manager, greeted him like an old friend and led him back to the same table where the drama had unfolded. The table had been reserved in his name this time. Ronald Haynes joined them for dinner. As the sun dipped below the city's horizon, casting golden shadows through the glass walls, he raised a glass of wine in Darius's direction. "Funny how life works," Darius said with a quiet smile. "If she'd just said thank you that night, her company would be worth $200 million, 0 cents more." Ronald chuckled. Arrogance always comes at a price, but this time, it bought an entire education for corporate America. The table laughed, but there was weight in the words. Darius looked around at the elegant decor, the quiet hum of fine dining, and the staff bustling in the background. People who might have once been seen as invisible, as he had been. Not anymore, not here, not ever again. Because Darius had learned something invaluable through the fire of that night. True victory doesn't come from proving others wrong, it comes from proving yourself right. The best revenge isn't in humiliation, it's in success. It's in building something no one thought you could because they never took the time to see your full value. And if there was one lesson he wanted others to walk away with, it was this. Being underestimated isn't always a curse. Sometimes it's the greatest gift of all. Because when no one sees you coming, you get to redefine every expectation and change the game on your own terms. So if you've ever been dismissed, talked over, or made to feel like your value depended on what you wore or what title you carried, let this story remind you. Your power lies not in how others see you, but in how well you know your worth. Leave a comment below if you've ever used underestimation as fuel. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where dignity, strategy, and intelligence prove stronger than prejudice every single time.